My name is Christina Bennett. I am 39, and the last time my mother introduced him to someone, she told them I was still trying to figure out what to do with her life. What she didn't know was that I'd been hunting international terrorists for the past 16 years. It was my cousin Emma's wedding day in Martha's Vineyard, and I was sitting alone at the back table designated for miscellaneous family, the relatives who didn't quite fit into the neat categories of success that my family recognized. The divorced stones, the ones without children, the aunts whose careers couldn't be easily explained at cocktail parties. My mother, Patricia, was holding court at the head table, regaling the other guests with stories of my accomplished siblings. My brother Michael, the neurosurgeon, my sister Rachel, the federal judge. And then there was me, Christina, the mysterious one who traveled for work but never talked about where or why. Christina works for the government. My mother would say when pressed, her tone suggesting this was somehow lesser than me siblings' achievements. Something with computers, I think. Very secretive, but probably not that important. If only Sheck knew that her dismissive tone was describing someone who held one of the highest security clearances in the United States government. Someone whose computer work involved tracking down terrorists who wanted to kill American citizens, someone who had prevented attacks that would have made 911 look small by comparison. But to my family, I was just the weird daughter who never married, never had children, and disappeared for months at a time on mysterious work assignment path I couldn't discuss. The wedding reception was everything Emma had dreamed of. Elegant, expensive, and full of the kind of people who measured success in easily quantifiable ways. Lawyers, doctors, investment bankers, and their perfectly polished wives. I sat at my assigned table wearing a simple black dress, watching my family network, and socialize with the ease that comes from belonging to a world where your accomplishments fit neatly on business cards. My table companions were equally misfit. Emma's eccentric Aunt bred show cats, a cousin who dropped out of medical school to become an artist, and Emma's college roommate worked as a freelance photographer. Women polite conversation about safe topics while the important people discussed important things at the important tables. The treble started uttering the toasts. Emma's father, me Uncle Robert, stood up with his champagne glass and began that traditional litany of gratitude and celebration. He thanked the various family members for their contributions to Emma's life and success. He praised the parents for their, quote, remarkable children who have achieved such distinguished careers in medicine and law. Then, almost as an afterthought, he gestured vaguely in my direction. And of course, we're grateful for all our family members, even those still finding their way in the world. The comment landed like a slap. Not malicious perhaps, but casually dismissive in a way that cut deeper than outright insult. I was 39 years old, and my uncle was talking about me like I was a college student still deciding on a major. My mother nodded approvingly, as if this gentle condescension was exactly the right tone to take with her disappointing daughter. My siblings looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The wedding guests silently applauded, most of them probably wondering who the hell I was and why I married and mentioned at all. I raised my champagne glass with everyone else and smiled pleasantly, giving no indication that anything was wrong. This was a skill I perfected over 16 years of intelligence work. The ability to maintain perfect emotional control while gathering information and planning my next move. After the toast, my mother approached my table with that particular smile she reserved for managing family situations that might become awkward. "Christina, dear," she said, "Mrs. Whitman was asking about your work. I told her you do something with computers for the government, but I wasn't sure of the details." Mrs. Whitman, apparently the wife of some important judge, looked at me with the polite interest of me in making conversation with the relative. "How interesting," she said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "What kind of computer work?" This was always the impossible moment. I couldn't tell her that I was a senior intelligence officer with the Kai specializing in counterterrorism and weapons of mass destruction. I couldn't explain that. I'd spent the last 3 years tracking a terrorist network that was attempting to smuggle radiological material into major American cities. I couldn't mention that I spoke 6 languages fluently and had lived undercover in places that would give her nightmares. Information security, I said, which was technically true and completely meaningless. "Oh," Mrs. Whitner replied, her interest visibly waning. "That sounds very technical." My mother jumped in to direct the conversation toward more palatable topics. Rachel's recent appointment to the appellate court, Michael's groundbreaking research in pediatric oncology, the kinds of accomplishments that impress people at wedding receptions, best they were comprehensible and socially prestigious. I excused myself and walked to Theater Race overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting over the vineyard, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that reminded me of sunsets I'd watched from rooftops in Damascus, Islamabad, and Sarajevo. Places where my work had taken, places where lives hung in thebulance of intelligence gathered and decisions made in the shadows. Hiding out here, I turned to see my sister Rachel approaching, champagne glass in hand. She looked elegant and confident in her navy blue dress. Every inch the distinguished federal judge that she was. Just getting some air, I said. Rachel joined me at the railing, looking out at the water. For a moment, we stood in comfortable silence, the sound of waves mixing with distant laughter from the reception. You know, Rachel said finally, I've always wondered what you really do. This was as close as anyone in my family had ever come to directly asking about me work. Rachel was smart enough to know that information security was a meaningless deflection, but she'd never pressed the issue. It's complicated, I said. Most important work is. I glanced at her, surprised by the observation. Rachel had built her career on precision and clarity. The law was black and white, right and wrong, guilty and innocent. She wasn't given to philosophical observations about ambiguity. Do you think what I do is important? I asked. Rachel considered the question seriously, which was one of things I'd always respected above her. She didn't give casual answers to serious questions. I think, she said slowly, that you disappear for months at a time to places you can't talk about, doing work you can't discuss for people you can't name. I think you've never married because your job makes normal relationships simplest. I think you carry yourself like someone who's seen things that most people can't imagine. She paused, swirling her champagne. And you think Mom and Dad have no idea what any of that means? Before I could respond, we were interrupted by the arrival of Emma's new husband, James, and several of his GRO's Sam, Ian. They were deep in conversation about something that had clearly been dominating the news cycle, though I'd been too focused on wedding logistics to pay attention. The whole thing is terrifying. One of them was saying, 3 major cities, potentially millions of people at risk. What are they talking about? Rachel asked quietly. I was wondering the same thing, but with a growing sense of professional concern rather than casual curiosity. James noticed us and approached with the slightly unsteady gait of someone who'd been celebrating enthusiastically. Ladies, he said. Sighed. Sorry to interrupt your quiet moment, but Rachel, as a federal judge, you might have insights into this terrorism situation that's been developing. My blood went cold. What situation? You haven't heard? James looked surprised. It's been all over the news for the past 2 days. Some kind of credible threat against multiple American cities. The FBI is calling a tone of the most serious terrorist plots they've ever uncovered. One of the groomsmen, clearly well-informed and eager to demonstrate his knowledge, launched into a detailed explanation. According to CNN, it involves some kind-of dirty bomb material, radioactive stuff that could contaminate entire city blocks. FBI says they've been tracking this terrorist network for years, and they're finally closing in. There's supposed to be some kind of major announcement tomorrow about arrests and seizures. My mind was racing throughout the implications. A major counterterrorism operation involving critical material. Arrests planned for tomorrow, multiple cities at risk. This sounded exactly like Operation Silent Thunder, the investigation I'd been leading for the past 3 years, but that was impossible. I would have been notified immediately if arrests were imminent. I was the lead intelligence officer on the case. Nothing happened in Silent Thunder without my direct involvement. Unless something had happened while I was here playing the role of disappointed family member at a wedding reception. Excuse me, I said, pulling out my phone. I need to make a call. I walked to a quiet corner of the terrace scene, dialed a number. That connected me to CIA Operations Center at Langley. The call was answered on the second ring. Operations. This is Hayes. Hayes, this is Bennett. I need an immediate status update on Silent Thunder. There was a brief pause. Ma'am, I was told you were unavailable for the weekend. We have orders to proceed without consultation. My heart stopped. What orders? Director Chen authorized implementation of Phase 3 this morning. Arrests are scheduled to begin at 06 tomorrow. All targets, all locations. Phase 3. The final phase of an operation I'd been building for 3 years, involving the arrest of 17 terrorists in 7 cities. The seizure of enough radiological material to build multiple dirty bombs, and the dismantling of the most sophisticated terrorist network ever to operate on American soil. And they were doing it without me. Hayes, I need to speak to Director Chen immediately. Ma am. The director is in the White House Situation Room with the President and National Security Council. The operation is designated Priority Alpha. No interruptions. I ended the call and stood staring at my phone, trying to process what I just learned. The most important counterterrorism operation of my career was being executed without my involvement because I had taken a weekend off to attend my cousin's wedding. Worse, I was learning about it from our groomsmen who'd seen it on CNN. Christina, is everything all right? I turned to see Rachel approaching, concern evident on her face. Behind her, I could see the wedding reception conching in blissful ignorance of the national security crisis unfolding in real time. I have to go, I said. Go where? The reception is just getting started. I have to get back to Washington immediately. Rachel stared at me. Christina, it's Emma's wedding. You can't just leave. I was already calculating logistics. The last flight to DC had departed an hour ago, but I could charter something from Martha's Vineyard Airport or take the ferry to mainland and drive through the night. Either way, I could be back in Washington by dawn. Rachel, I need you to make my apologies to the family. Tell them something came up at work. Something came up at work. Christina, it's Saturday night of a holiday weekend. What kind of work emergency? She stopped mid-sentence, staring at my face. Whatever she saw there made her take a step backward. Oh, my God, she whispered. You're involved in terrorism thing, aren't you? I didn't answer, but my expression apparently told her everything she needed to know. How involved? She asked. I looked at my sister, this accomplished woman who'd spent her career weighing evidence and making judgments about truth and consequences. In that moment, I made a decision that I had avoided for 16 years. I'm the lead intelligence officer, I said quietly. It's my operation. Rachel's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the terrace stones. The sound drew attention from nearby guests, but I barely noticed. Your operation? Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. For 3 years, I've been tracking a terrorist network that smuggled radiological material into the United States with the intention of building dirty bombs and detonating them in American cities. I said, my voice steady and professional. Tomorrow morning, the FBI will arrest 17 people and seize enough radioactive material to contaminate most of downtown Boston. I pulled out my CIA credentials and showed them to Rachel. Her face went completely. Why is she read the word Central Intelligence Agency and quote Senior Intelligence Officer? And I'm learning about the arrest phase of Myeon operation from your brother-in-law's drunk friends because I'm here pretending to be the familiar disappointed who works with computers. Rachel was staring at me as if I were a complete stranger. Christina, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said, returning my credentials to my purse. Because to this family, I'm just their daughter who never got married and travels for work. The one who's still figuring out what to do with her life. I turned to walk back toward the reception, but Rachel grabbed my arm. Wait, you can't just drop this on me and walk away. Christina, if what you're saying is true, if what I'm saying is true, then the daughter mom introduces as having computer problems has spent the last 16 years hunting down terrorists who want to kill American citizens. If what I'm saying is true, then Uncle Robert's toast about family members still finding their way weighs about someone who holds one of the highest security clearances in the United States government. My voice was rising now, the controlled calm finally-cracking after years of polite deflection and casual dismissal. If what I'm saying is true, Rachel, then while you've been building a distinguished shed car that everyone can understand and applaud, I've been doing work that actually saves lives. Work that matters. Work that I can never discuss at cocktail parties or family wedding spouse. It's classified at levels that most people don't even know exist. Rachel was staring at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been awe. How long? She asked. 16 years since I was 23 years old. And you've never told anyone? I couldn't tell anyone. That's what classify means, Rachel. It means that the work I do, the places I go, the people I track, none of it can be shared with anyone who doesn't have the appropriate clearance and need to know. I looked back toward the reception where my family was celebrating and networking and measuring six in ways that had nothing to do with the actual safety and security off country they lived in. It means, I continued, that I've sat through 16 years of family gatherings where I've been treated like the underage of Arbus. I couldn't explain that I've prevented terrorist attacks that would have killed thousands of people. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, processing what I told her. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. The voice of someone who just realized that everything she thought she knew about her sister was wrong. Does anyone else know? My supervisor, my colleagues, the President of the United States, when my intelligence briefs cross his desk, but me family, the people who are Sepaceto know me best, I shook my head. They think I work with computers. I started walking back toward the reception hall, but Rachel stayed beside me, clearly struggling with what she just learned. Christina, what are you going to do? I'm going to make my apologies to Emma and leave for Washington. I have a terrorist network to dismantle and a national security crisis to manage. I mean, a Booth family, about mom and dad, and nothing, I said firmly. I'm going to do nothing because that's what I've always done. I've protected all of you from the truth about what the world is really like and what it takes to keep you safe. We reached the entrance to the reception hall, and I could hear the band playing and people laughing and celebrating. A perfect wedding. Reception for a perfect family, but had no idea that their own had spent her career standing between them and the people who wanted to destroy everything they valued. But Rachel, I said, turning to face her one last time. The next time Samuel makes a toast about family members who are still finding their way in the world, remember this conversation. I walked into the reception hall and made my way directly to Emma, who was glowing with happiness as she danced with her new husband. Emma, I said, interrupting the dance. I'm so sorry, but I have to leave. There's been an emergency at work. Emma looked disappointed, but not surprised. Oh, Christina, can it wait until tomorrow? I'm afraid not, but you look absolutely beautiful, and this has been a perfect wedding. I hugged her quickly, then turned to leave. As I walked toward the exit, I passed my parents' table, where my mother was deep in conversation with Mrs. Whitman about Rachel's judicial career. Leaving so soon, dear? My mother asked, glancing up with mild concern. Work emergency? I said simply. On a Saturday night, Christina, really you need to learn to set better boundaries with your employers. I looked at my mother, this woman who'd raised me and loved me, but never really understood me. This woman who thought their daughter's problem was an inability to set boundaries with her employers. You're absolutely right, Mom, I said. I really should learn to say no when my country needs me. The comment went right over her head, as I knew it would. She smiled and patted my arm. That's my girl, drive safely. I walked out of the reception into the Martha's Vineyard night, pulling out my phone to call for a charter flight to Washington. Behind me, the party continued, full of accomplished people, celebrating success and family and all the things that made a life worth living. What they didn't know is that their ability to celebrate those things depended on people like me, people who worked in the shadows, who couldn't be celebrated or acknowledged or even understood by the people we protected. 6 hours later, I was in the Operations Center at Langley, wearing jeans and a hastily packed blazer, coordinating the final phase of Operation Silent Thunder. At dawn, FBI agents in 7 cities would simultaneously arrest 17 terrorists and seize enough radiological material to build multiple dirty bombs. The operation was a complete success. Every target was apprehended, every piece of radioactive material recovered, and the terrorist network was completely dismantled. It made headlines for weeks and was later described by the Director of National Intelligence as one of the most successful counterterrorism operations in American history. My name was never mentioned in any of the news coverage. Of course, that's how intelligence work functions. The people who do the work remain invisible while the results speak for themselves. But 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Miss Sister Rachel. Christina, her voice was different than I'd ever heard it, respectful in a way that was complete line. Hi, Rachel. I've been following the news coverage of that terrorism case, the one you told me about at Emma's wedding. Oh, the president gave a speech yesterday about how American intelligence services prevented what could have been the worst terrorist attack since 9/11. I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't violate security protocols. Christina, Rachel continued, were youth intelligence officer he was talking about? The one who spent 3 years building the case that saved potential assistants of American lives? I was quiet for a long moment, weighing the response carefully. Rachel, I said, finally, I can't discuss operational details. No, but Christina, I need you to know something. I understand now why you couldn't tell us who you really are. And you understand that what you do is more important than anything the rest of us have ever accomplished. She paused, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. I'm proud of you, she said. I'm proud that you're my sister, and I'm ashamed that it took me 39 years to realize that the family member we thought was still finding her way had actually found the most important way of all. After I hung up, I sat in my office looking out at the Virginia countryside, thinking about family and sacrifice and the strange mathematics of a life lived in service to something larger than yourself. Rachel never told the Restoff family what she'd learned about my work. She couldn't any more than I could. But something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. A recognition of who I really was and what my choices had meant. And that was a no. Because sometimes the deepest satisfaction doesn't come from proving yourself to everyone who underestimates you. Sometimes it comes from having at least one person understand that your unconventional path led to something that truly mattered. The girl who'd been dismissed as still figuring out her life had actually figured out how to save lives. And in a world full of people measuring success by visible achievements and social recognition, that knowledge would always be more valuable than their approval.